and that should disappear in a moment as well. Awesome. All right, hello and welcome anybody or everybody who has chimed in now or later, as Siim is already smiling. Awesome. Well, welcome to another live session with Michael and myself. And as with every of these sessions, we've had new guests on the show, you can call it by now. And today we have Siim here. Hey, Siim, great to have you on board.
Hi, thanks for inviting me.
That's all right. We're just being nice. But really cool to have you on board. We obviously been working for a while together already, and you've been kind of one of our first users of Pace Analytics. So really excited to have you here and talk a bit more about this. For anybody who's listening in, what we'll do today is essentially we'll have a quick intro of Siim and do a bit of a question and answer game around him and his background. Then asking a bit more about Pace Analytics, which obviously is the focus of these sessions. And then we're gonna drill into a few things that Siim found particularly helpful over the last weeks using Pace Analytics. If any questions come up, feel free to ask online. There should be some comment or chat box available for you, and all questions that come up are kind of wired to us, and we'll give you some feedback. But I think, Michael, maybe I'll hand over to you to give a more appropriate introduction of Siim.
So Siim isn't enough. I thought by that everyone would already just be like, right, Siim. All right, maybe a little bit of more context around Siim. So I would, to briefly sort of summarize Siim, I'd say he has nearly a decade of experience in revenue management from hotel brands such as Penta Hotels and Swiss Hotels. However, he's known as an RM pioneer in the hostel and hybrid sector, most recently having led Generated through a complete transformation in pricing strategy and business intelligence. Since 9 months back, he's located in Germany as the Chief Revenue Officer for A&O, the largest hostel group in the world, managing nearly 30,000 beds in total. He's a former schoolmate of mine, but more than that, an advisor, ambassador, and friend of the entire Pace team. Welcome, Siim.
Thank you. That was a very formal introduction. Yeah.
I mean, if that is not perfect preparation, I don't know what is.
Did I miss out on anything?
No, I think you said it very nicely.
All right. We know that things are slowly opening up in Germany. What's the atmosphere right now in the normally buzzing city of Berlin?
It's it actually feels almost like normal. I mean, it's you can basically see streets full of people, bars, restaurants are getting quite busy, and it's not far from what it used to be, other than you don't have that many tourists, and people are wearing masks, and that's about it. It definitely feels kind of normal being outside on the street, and then you go back to the reality once you step into the office and realize that actually every hotel is still running quite a low occupancy, and the business is still down, obviously, but like the locals have their normal life almost back now.
Nice. Are you seeing yourself as a local by now?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Nice. As a German in this round as well, I can approve of Siim's adaptation to the German culture. By now, your German has been pretty good anyways, right? You were pretty fluent in German anyways already.
I mean, the German has to be the judge of that, but
yeah, I have to admit, by now, I think if Siim and I speak English or German, it doesn't really make a big difference anymore. A few months ago, I would have judged differently, but by now, he has caught up massively, which is pretty amazing. So kudos.
Well,
It is
I
a
will.
lovely language. We all know it's a language of love, German. So therefore, kudos to you.
Yeah, other than your German experience, I touched a little bit on it during the intro here. Obviously, loads of experience, especially in the hostel part of revenue management, and a big pioneer there. You've also been with Pace for a long time, in reality longer than what I've been myself. How would you describe that sort of journey that you've been through?
I think it's been really a very interesting couple of years. I mean, yeah, it's been quite a few years now since we first met with Jens and Philip, and then later on with Jason and Lucas. You know, it's been actually really nice looking at the development, sort of from the sidelines, but maybe closer than most people. So. You know, I think I still remember the first prototype quite well, and the first conversations. And I mean, it's obviously evolved quite a bit since then.
Yeah, sometimes I get some anecdotes from Lucas and Jens and the guys as well about what it was. I never got to see it, so like to me, there's been so much happening in the last year. I would have loved to see what it was like 2 years ago, for example. But yeah,
I'm not too sure. Not too sure. No, let's leave things in the past.
Look, I'm not gonna beat around the bush. We'll go into sort of a fire round, Sim. I'll ask 10 quick questions. Get through that, and by the end of it, we'll have Lucas get to work as well with some analytics as well. But I'll start off by asking full name.
I lost you. Full name
of yourself.
You mean questions about me? Okay, my full
name. Title and current employer.
Chief Revenue Officer at A&O Hostels.
Role model.
I don't have one.
It's okay, Sim. You can admit. I mean, we've spoken about
it. Favorite hostel or hostel brand?
My favorite hostel would be the one that I've visited would be probably the Casa Garcia in Barcelona.
What made it stand out?
It's actually a really cool old building. So it's a former bank office, and they basically kept the old building in a fairly unchanged format. So in the basement you still have the bar in one of the old bank vaults. So you go into the vault where they used to keep like the valuables and then cash. They still have like the circle vault door going into the bar, and you see like small cells. Like it's sort of I mean, it's a really cool atmosphere where they've taken really the old building and left it sort of as it was, and so it creates a completely different atmosphere.
That sounds really good. It sounds a little bit like have you been to the Ned here in London? That's a hotel though, but very similar sort of idea, I think.
Yeah.
Cool. Hardest part about revenue management?
Probably one thing that would summarize over the years. It's having people like within the business from different parts of the business fully embrace or understand what it's about, and how, like, I mean, hospitality is still very much like, you know, a business about the guest experience and operational excellence, and it's obviously it's one of the kind of the soft challenges, not necessarily like a technical challenge, but having having really everybody on board with the commercial mindset, to have the drive for better revenue in the, you know, in all the operations. So that's probably something which has been the biggest challenge over the years. You know, in the early days in the hotels, and now later, you know, as you mentioned before, so in the last couple of years within the hostel business, that's been something which hasn't, you know, it's been very new to the hostel environment, especially because you know, the concept of the hostel started with, you know, basically people just, you know, it's been more like the goodwill business, where, you know, it hasn't been so much about the commercials. Now with the private equity investment going into the sector, obviously there's a focus on the high level commercials and really delivering the profits. So it's that there's a lot of, you know, teaching and convincing that it involves.
Is the future revenue manager coming from hotels or more number focused educations?
It can be both, right? Yeah, but I mean, in reality, I do think it's like being a good revenue manager or a person in revenue management. That doesn't really matter nowadays if you've been checking in guests at the front desk. I mean, it helps to know, obviously, the frontline operations. It helps to understand what's happening actually inside the property as well. But you know, you don't have to actually go through the rooms to know how the pricing works, because that's really a numbers game now.
Will total revenue management ever become the norm in the hotel and hostels industry?
Honest answer would be no. I mean, and I'm saying it because not to really to kind of you know, many people will be very confused about that statement, but I think there are so many parts of the business where we don't necessarily have the kind of the controls over the pricing or the demand. Let's say, I mean, let's say you're a city center hotel and you operate a cafeteria. I mean, as much as you would want to see, okay, let's maximize the profits of the cafe as well. I mean, there's always the certain portion of the business which is very much just, you know, very transient, very ad hoc, you know. So it doesn't necessarily go along with the hotel demand patterns, but also, I mean, personally, I think it's one of the topics where you also need to question kind of the importance of getting, you know, sorting out every single detail versus actually having your focus on the 80% that actually deliver the revenue or the profit of the company. I mean, when we talk about total revenue management, then for me it's something which more applies to resorts, conference hotels, you know, facilities which have different departments that really highly depend on the other department performing as well. But I mean, let's take the hostel business. I mean, the F&B component is, you know, depending on the model, obviously either less or more important. But I mean, we look at obviously the total value of each, you know, group lead or business we get. But at the end of the day, you know, I'm not looking at the price of a cup of coffee at the restaurants.
Fair enough. ADR or occupancy?
Well, you kind of need both, right? Yeah. So.
Is there a decision to be made? Can you lean towards one, or there's no way? Maybe also in the current situation.
Yeah, so I mean, again, it comes down to revenue, right? So we might have a great occupancy, but if we're not matching our operational cost, then we're still making loss. So I think something which, at least over the years I've been in revenue management, I haven't heard or seen much involvement, or even not much even co-thinking from the revenue management side, is the profitability of the business. So I mean, actually thinking about the cost of operation helps also the revenue managers really understand the extreme kind of the bottom they can go with the prices. So I mean, it really varies, obviously, also, you know, depending which kind of hotel or hostel or kind of the star level you're in, because there is a perception question. And yeah, I mean, 5-star hotels, if they start now dropping into kind of prices, and if they go into the 2-3-star territory, it will be hard for them to get the prices up because of the customer perception. And I mean, they have obviously their loyal customer segments as well. But then we talk about the budget sector. You know, the budget sector is there because there is a big portion of travelers who really look at the price. And in this time, I mean, for our company, for A&O, we know exactly what's the limit where we get the rooms, kind of, you know, what's the profitability margin that we need to reach. It's quite low, so obviously we can be very aggressive with the pricing to make sure that we get as many people into our buildings as possible right now, because having empty rooms with no guests is also a cost. Because I mean, the month of, what was the end of March, beginning of April, when like the properties were completely empty, you know, you still need to have security or technicians going through the building, going through every room, floor, almost on a daily basis, to make sure that the waterworks are running, you know, that everything is still just, you know, intact.
Yeah, absolutely.
Cool. Now that we've been through that part, I know that Lucas's fingers are already sort of itching a little bit. Any follow-up questions on Siim's answers there, Lucas, from your side?
I mean, tons of questions, always to ask, but I also have no, Siim, be careful. But I think let's maybe jump into the app and actually talk a bit more about Pace Analytics, because Siim actually has been, yeah, Michael, are you laughing because I just want to talk about Pace Analytics?
I told you his fingers are itching, Siim.
Let me just quickly share my screen. Can you guys see that?
Yeah.
Yeah. Great. So the reason why I thought it's great to maybe jump straight into this is because, unlike many others who have been using Pace Analytics over the last weeks, Siim, you actually didn't focus as much on building dashboards. You've done that as well, but whenever we have conversations and talking about Pace Analytics, the one thing that you actually always highlight is the flexibility of kind of being able to explore the data, right?
Right.
So I thought what we could do today, and this is maybe so maybe just quickly for people who are new to this is our app. If you haven't seen our app or you haven't seen Pace Analytics, you should really check out the previous videos that we've uploaded. So we have our kind of new analytics area here, where we provide our customers with a set of predefined reports that they can drill into and understand better if their Wi-Fi is working as it should. There you go. But yeah, the thing that I'd love to talk a bit more about today is the explores. And so maybe you can just walk us through a few use cases where you have used explores over the past weeks, and kind of where these instances kind of having the ability to drill into the data were helpful. And I know it's not just revenue management, it's also operational, where this came in handy.
Yeah, so I mean, one area is something which obviously, you know, I would like to think that most of your customers wouldn't even need to worry about that, but it's really the technical side of what's happening in the backend. So because obviously with A&O we have basically a custom API built to Pace. So with the support of analytics now, we've been able to get down to the final details to understand if absolutely everything we transmit to Pace is actually sent in the right format, and if we're not missing out on any particular revenue or bookings, to make sure that the data is 100% clean, which which doesn't always show on the, if you look at, let's say, your monthly revenues or even the daily revenues. So we've been now looking at the analytics, or basically drilling into like individual booking numbers, to really cross-check versus what we would expect to see in Pace. Naturally, like I say, for most customers that wouldn't be the case, because you would have a certified API, but for anyone working with, maybe with a PMS, which doesn't work this well with a with a third-party software there, it was super helpful for us to now really see that level of detail and to do a bit of cleanup, which was one of the focuses now in the weeks where pricing wasn't really the factor itself.
Yeah, that was really just from my side as well. That was super interesting just to kind of see and observe which tactics you've applied, because from our perspective, I think we always obviously come in and we typically build the integrations. In your instance, because you've built kind of a custom integration to your own data warehouse, there's little for us to do, little for us to monitor. And I remember initially when we had set things up and Pace Analytics wasn't quite available, there was a lot of back and forth between the two of us. And then all of a sudden, questions just stopped. And I was like, oh, great. Everything seems to be working. Until you told me about kind of dashboards that you had built, where you automatically are monitoring, kind of getting notifications about if inventories changed and they're not really change in a direction that you didn't expect. So really, really cool, just from purely an operational perspective and kind of having a full breadth and understanding of kind of the data that is going into Pace. A use case that we didn't think of at all. So just really interesting to see how you built this out.
Yeah, and I mean, on top of that, something which we first started doing it because of the just to make sure that the setup, which we sort of, I mean, as you say, at some point the question stopped because we assumed, at least, and based on the initial analysis, we said, okay, we have 100% data accuracy. Then we later found out it's actually it wasn't 100% anymore. We had a couple of exceptions which didn't occur like back in January, and then we realized that they occurred later on, and then we were able to spot them using analytics. But also that's one thing led to another, and I mean one of the dashboards that you have there, actually this volume on the books versus last year actuals. So using that example, we also started looking at the number of out of order inventory that some of the properties were using, especially during a couple of nights where we were busier. And then, I mean, first we just used the report for that during the like March, April, basically, where there was no business because we were actually closing partially the houses or some inventory, and then later on, once the business resumed, we had to make sure, and obviously from the revenue management side, it's important for us to have all the inventory available once the demand is there. But very often, the revenue manager would never actually, I mean, unless they actually check within the PMS, they wouldn't see if the operation teams have taken some inventory out. So using one of the reports from analytics for that was also very helpful to make sure that the operation were not just blocking inventory for reasons which could be actually sorted out within a day.
Yeah, No, that's really cool. And again, it just shows. I think, yeah, like I said earlier, it wasn't really aware to us. Like we didn't build this analytics product to be necessarily used across different functions. Because this at the end of the day is like a very technical and very operational function that you have filled out over the last weeks as well. So it's just really exciting for us also to see that we were able to help here. But one thing that we discussed prior to this call, we spoke about this yesterday actually, was in the context of you obviously have a lot of properties with A&O to manage. And that's something where Pace can help particularly good or particularly well, because obviously from an automation perspective, we can kind of take care of the pricing. But we spoke about the configurations. So obviously Pace allows you to configure minimum and maximum prices. And I'd love to actually build this chart that we discussed yesterday together. So while I start picking some dimensions and filters here for everybody to see, maybe you two can run us through this, so I can focus a bit more on the building part.
So I assume you're talking about the price points, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I can give it maybe to all the viewers out there a bit of a backstory. Well, once we started the basically the project of the reinvented revenue management in A&O, it was the key goal here was always to actually do it at the most efficient, the most efficient way, with using less manpower and more technology, which, as Michael mentioned at the beginning, so we have almost 30,000 sellable units every day across Europe. So it's obviously quite a number of inventory to sell, and then quite a good number of different price points to manage every day. And in the traditional setup, that would be also a team of revenue managers looking at the price movement every day. So that really wasn't an option for us, because we wanted to make sure we automate the whole process. And in order to do that, then we started really kind of trying to put some science into how we define the price ranges in the first place, which it's not overly complicated as a one-off task, but then to continuously keep an eye on the price range that we have set, whether it's still actually efficient, whether it's still applicable, or are we possibly overpriced or kind of overestimating the minimum we have to set, or the other way around, are we underestimating the maximum price that we need to set in the system to have the system really running on full automation without anyone checking the daily prices manually. And that's how we came to this dashboard, or the need for this dashboard that Lucas is currently building in the background, is to see the actual prices which are being booked for certain day of week or within a certain period, in order to see, my average rates might be, whether it's 100 or 400, doesn't matter. But the average is always a combination of multiple bookings, and it doesn't necessarily describe the prices or the price ranges that most customers are willing to pay, but also how the price evolves for any arrival date. So by looking at the individual price points and basically the frequency of each price being booked, that helps us understand how we need to formulate the price range for certain periods or a day of week, and whether we need to either expand the range or maybe the range is just way too high, so that you might have the price jumping up to a level which is never booked, and then it drops again. Your average rate will only show you the prices which were booked on average, but you would kind of miss out maybe the extremely high prices that customers are willing to pay. or also it would show you that your highest price points are never reached.
Yeah. So I thought this was really interesting to discuss a bit more because obviously it's, well, we from our perspective from Pace, what we do in the background is literally this, right? We look at patterns in booking curves that we can identify. We try to understand what different price points have been selling within a booking window of kind of within similar days and seasons, similar days across days of the week. So it was just really interesting that you took this philosophy that we kind of push into our system and actually take it for yourself and kind of challenge that in terms of, okay, well, what can we do otherwise, and how can we potentially support Pace as a system with kind of relevant minimum and maximum prices for you just to learn as well and understand from what the system is kind of getting here. So maybe just a few words from my side here to kind of walk through what I just quickly kind of added here in the background. So what we want to look at here is essentially, we want to look at a booking window of particular nights that we want to classify by a particular day of the week. So what I've done here is I basically said, let's look at all of the nights we have in January and February. And let's look at especially all of the Mondays. So if I were to take all of our Monday booking curves or all of our kind of Monday price curves within the booking window, and I would layer them on top of each other, which price points would I see the most? And we've picked a particular hotel room here and a specific hotel to just make it easier. Obviously, if you have a hotel where potentially all of your prices, all of your rooms are very similarly priced, you might even want to look at them collectively. We've just picked one inventory type here to keep things a bit more simple. But yeah, as Siim said, instead of having kind of the ADR per lead day so that all reservations are actually summed together and averaged, we can actually look in here at a scatter plot and we can look, well, how many different price points do we actually have per day? And we can see here, for example, for lead day 39, so this is 39 days out before any Monday in this date range. We have, what was it here? We have 3 different price points at which this property has been selling: 710, 713, and 722. Now, this is interesting in different ways. First of all, it's interesting because, well, there could be different rate plans behind them, but it's also interesting to perhaps to understand, well, which different segments have been booking here, or which different channels have been booking here. But I think overall, and this is what you were alluding to, Siim, is you kind of want to understand this full bracket here, right?
Mm-hmm.
Kind of want to understand, well, in which area will the algorithm, will Pace optimize my prices for? Because obviously we take inspiration from that, but potentially also, are you happy with this? Do you want to be more aggressive in the market? Do you want to kind of anchor your minimum price potentially a bit higher because there was a shift in strategy that you've decided in the organization, which goes above and beyond the data that Pace has at its disposal? So really, really interesting here, and obviously also for any outliers. So we have here, for example, a few nights where we have some reservations. They're all at the same price, so they're probably together. We actually want to drill into those and want to understand, well, why have we been able to push such a high price here? We can actually click into that and understand what kind of booking this is. So in here we could see, okay, this is coming from Expedia. It's this particular segment. It was a reservation that stayed. So the booking was never canceled, because that's something which can obviously happen, right? You can have outliers, but they get canceled over time. So it's just kind of helpful to see the context here as well. We could have just filtered for just confirmed, but I always find that quite interesting to be able to drill into the data.
Yeah, and it's so just to add to this, status is we intentionally did not filter only on the confirmed reservations, because also seeing the the reservations on the report which might have been cancelled later, it will still give some color to the prices that people were willing to book. Even if they ended up cancelling later, you will still see what they're willing to commit to in the first place.
Yeah, No, absolutely. One thing I was just wondering is actually what's quite interesting, or what might be quite interesting to see here is also the booking curve against that, right?
Yeah, I was actually going to say the same. That it would be quite interesting to add the line or something like the overall the aggregation of the occupancy levels for those nights, because looking at the first kind of 90 to 100 days to 40 days before arrival, you might even wonder, like, were we too conservative there, or if the occupancy ended up actually still being very low, like could you have been more aggressive downwards? So having that on top of the prices will add some more color here.
I'm just gonna, so I just saved this particular chart to a dashboard. So we could look at these two charts separately, because maybe if we add all in one, it might be a bit much. But let's just have a quick look at this. So what we would have to do, so we'd have to get rid of ADR, and we'd have to get rid of the booking ID, because we don't really care about individual booking IDs anymore by that point. We just care about the lead day, right? What about both of you? Feel free to chime in on how to build this.
Yeah, I'm just wondering if you remove the booking ID, you might not get the individual price points anymore.
Well, so that's why I saved this to a different chart, dashboard already. Just, yeah, because it's exactly that. I don't think we can get everything into one chart just by default, because we have different booking IDs. We can merge those two different charts together in the end. But I think it makes sense to, just for the exercise now,
right,
maybe to do it that way. So if we just do units sold, so we'd have units sold by lead day, which is not necessarily a booking curve. It's just kind of how many units did we pick up by day as we go closer. So this is not necessarily accumulated. Yeah, there we go. So we could add a calculation here and do accumulated bookings. I'll just do a running total here of units sold and save that. And we want to turn that around.
And Siim, for this type of analysis, is this something that you'd be using on a returning basis in order to sort of set the strategy for? So let's say that we now went through January. Are you already then looking at how you could potentially improve January the following year, or is it something that you look at a little bit closer to the date itself?
Well, let's say if it wasn't for the current the coronavirus crisis, we would use that also for the following year to really set the long-term strategy, but also in the short run, because I mean, even in the normal yearly cycle until early this year, I mean, what was, at least based on the data I've seen in the last couple of years being with different employers, is that the booking patterns, they change quite rapidly. So looking at data for from more than 12 months back, it was pretty evident that it was becoming less and less relevant. So just because the kind of the online shift started, yeah, I mean, some 10 years ago, but it's still gaining traction every year. More and more people book online every year. It's the new generation coming up. So the patterns were changing so fast that I was using it actually more or less on an ongoing basis to really look at the next couple of months all the time. But then also it was something we would have looked at when setting up the strategy for the next year or for the next season, to make sure that we're still priced at the optimum. But especially now, so where with the current economic situation, I mean, 2021 at the moment is anyone's guess. Same is September 2020. So we're basically looking at that really in what's happening now. And is there something that I find here which will actually help me already improve the next couple of weeks? So, I mean, we're seeing now since the beginning of May, our kind of the weekly pickup is growing between 10 to 100%, which sounds fantastic, but it's coming off a base of almost zero. So, so it's still in low volumes, but because of the such a low volume of business that we're doing right now, we're trying to make sure that we're actually getting the best price out of it without sacrificing any of the volume, because it's all about fine margins right now.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm just modifying this a bit more because we have both in a filter already. I'm just kind of adding some filters to the dashboard so we could actually use this more dynamically. But I think we're there. So you can already see it in the background that we kind of have now the price curve and the booking curve. And you can kind of see, okay, well, I can see a lot of activity in price there versus how much did I actually pick up. Obviously but we're using demo data, so things do look very smooth.
Very smooth, yeah. I mean,
but if we just pick this here, this is the last one, day of week, and default to Monday, that's fine. There we go. So this would now be and we could obviously add more to this, but this would now be kind of a dashboard that we could use to kind of analyze different date ranges. So if you go in and you say, okay, I want to kind of review potentially next year, January and February, as you just described, and you say, okay, well, I want to create the settings or the kind of strategic setup which I want to feed into Pace for those particular inventory types. That can now allow you to basically, great, well, for this hotel room, give me context, maybe tell me how this particular day of the week, you might actually want to do it across multiple ones. I've now set it up with just one, but I think you can do multiple ones as well if you want to kind of group your weekends together and your weekdays. But ultimately allowing you to kind of drill into this and just kind of analyze the different price points which are available in the context of the booking curve.
Yeah.
Cool. I'm just keeping an eye on time as well because we have a reputation for running over.
I think the purpose of the report and what to use it for and how it looks is really clear and clearly very, very useful. I'm just as sure that the two of you will be connecting at some point this week or the next and continue building on it, if I know you guys right. But for now, I think this looks like a really, really good base to work from. So unless there's something that you really want to highlight that is missing or that we could quickly build, I think it's great for what it is already.
Yeah. No, I think it's very useful for anyone who hasn't looked at the kind of the individual price points before. I think this might actually kind of shed light on something which they never saw before.
Nice. Yeah, I mean, obviously, lots of ways to drill into this more. Again, we can
Did we lose Lucas?
Was that Lucas that we lost?
Yeah, looks like it. Because I can still see you, and I can. Well, I'm here.
Perhaps he actually put himself a strict deadline of being done by quarter to 3, and then after that it just cuts. But I think from my side, really happy with what we got out of this.